discuss with you this evening briefly is part 2 of where I was last week, Christ-centered leadership. This is important because we live in a culture that has a leadership fetish, and that's another self-seeking, self-serving, narcissistic, self-absorbed ladder that you climb for the purpose of self. And that is absolutely not Jesus's form of leadership. I just want to let you know that. All right. There's a few scriptures that we're going to dive into. Now, Matthew 5, Mark 10, John 13, which was where we're going to be most of our time this evening, and also 2 Kings 3:11. All right. Jesus was the greatest leader because he was the best follower. And this is very important. This principle is important because it speaks of humility. The assumption that I know what's best, and since I have the microphone, we're going to do what I want. Living with that assumption is a very bad assumption. And most assumptions or presumptions are rooted in pride. And although Jesus was perfect, fully God and fully man, never gave into temptation, never gave into sin, even he didn't just do what he wanted to do. Even what he wanted to do was good and right and just. He was always looking to the Father and listening for the Father to allow the Father to direct him, which means that listening and following precedes leading and speaking. Bishop Sharona was working with the pastors with this. DK and Tina were there when he was telling us that we have all been formed to speak and not listen. And learning to listen, even to things that aren't being said, will save your marriage. If you don't pay attention in your marriage, you have a high probability of losing your marriage. If you don't pay attention to your responsibilities at work, you have a high probability of losing your job. Not listening and not being observant and not paying attention will lead to loss. Whether you believe me or not, I'm just telling you ahead of time to try to help you and save you and to save you unnecessary pain. It's almost like if you go to the mechanic and the mechanic says, hey, it's time to change those brake pads, and you don't listen to him, and then 3 weeks later you're hearing this screeching sound, and then he goes, well, your $400 bill just turned into a $1,200 bill because in addition to you not having brake pads, now you've ruined your rotors. And so now we have a problem that you thought you were going to wait for, and now your problem multiplied times 2 or times 3 because you weren't observant, you didn't listen to wise counsel. So listening is one of the areas that will make all of the other areas of your life better. In fact, you are the sum total of who and what you've listened to. Now, Jesus was the greatest speaker because he was the best listener. This is important. Communication does not begin with speaking. Communication begins with listening. This is very, very important. This is human relationships, romantic relationships, which should be leading to marriage or shouldn't be leading anywhere. Those are the type of relationships that are essential and necessary, and those relationships going well is predicated on listening. Now, let's say you have a counselee relationship, a discipler, a disciplee, a mentor versus a mentee. That relationship is also another relationship that is predicated on listening. This is very important to understand that many times the answers to questions we have, the solutions to problems we're facing, Many times they're right in front of us. The answer is there. The solution is there. Sometimes it's in a sermon. Sometimes it's in a conversation. Sometimes it's in a song. Sometimes it's in a devotional reading. Sometimes it's in a brother or sister praying for you. Sometimes it's a question someone asks you that make you search your soul and really think carefully about what's going on in your life. But God's grace is always toward His people. And if we're listening, paying attention, and being observant, we can save ourselves from unnecessary collateral damage in our life and in the lives of those we care about if we would be attentive to who and what actually matters. Jesus lived with a posture that was always toward the Father. One of the things that Bill Johnson said is that if I'm always reacting to the world, I can't live in response to the Father. So you have to really determine what you're going to focus on. Are you going to focus on the world? If you focus on the world, the things of the world, the value systems of the world, you will be anxious, you will be competitive, you will be frustrated, you will be overly tired because you will feel like a hamster on a wheel that never stops, and the wheel is designed to kill you and destroy you. If you say, I'm not going to focus on that, I'm going to focus on the Father, I'm going to focus on the Son, I'm going to focus on the Spirit, I'm going to focus on the Scriptures, I'm going to focus on my assignment, I'm going to focus on my responsibilities. Now, what you're doing is you're living from the kingdom toward the world instead of in the world and of the world trying to get to the kingdom when you die. Or try to experience some kingdom moments once or twice a week at church. That's a miserable way to live. That is not the way Jesus intends us to live. Now, we're going to go Matthew 5:19. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them shall be called great or mega in the kingdom of heaven. Now this is important because here you see a proper order. You see the order of doing, then teaching. Now, when Jesus moved in the office of a rabbi, rabbis did not just talk, but they demonstrated and then explained. So you see that when Jesus is washing feet, which we're going to get into in a moment. Not all demonstration is just healing and miracles, because you can do healings, prophecy, and miracles and still go to hell. So that's awesome. We are Pentecostal. We love that. We believe that. But more than that, we want to have the character and the virtue of Jesus. We want to really follow Jesus so that stuff, all the signs and wonders, that stuff follows us. We don't have to follow it. We're not chasing it. It's following us because we're following Jesus. This is important. So if you go through Matthew 5:19, you go back 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, you get back to 13, 12, and then you go all the way to 3. What is he talking about? He's talking about what we've known as the Beatitudes, which we're gonna touch on those again. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are those in Jesus' mind are not suggestions. Those are commandments. Those are how kingdom citizens, those are how sons and daughters, those are how ambassadors interact from the kingdom with the pain and the brokenness of this world as representatives of Jesus in this world. Living like that makes us in this world, but not of this world. So this is what Jesus said in this verse. But whoever does and teaches them shall be called great. So greatness, as Jesus is defining it, is when there is continuity between first how you live, then what you teach. Now this is very important because this is actually how you make real disciples. This is actually how you father children. This is how you father sons and daughters, like biological, and you're faithful so that they don't need a spiritual father because their real father was actually present and he was spiritually alert. The Lord told me if you do your job correctly, they won't need a spiritual father. If you don't do your job correctly, they'll need a spiritual father. I don't think Brian Johnson has a spiritual father. I think he has his dad, Bill. You understand the point? So if you're present and attentive and you lead by example, it naturally creates an opportunity for them to step into the type of lifestyle that is being demonstrated in front of them. Let me give you an example. Today, Elijah dropped the TV clicker behind the couch at the most inopportune time, worst time, and I wanted to headbutt my head against the wall, to be truthful with you. And I was really frustrated and not happy. So I had to change my attitude and I had to check myself. But I said to them, I'm not helping you get it. You have to get it in yourself. Why did I do that? Not because I'm heartless or cruel. I did that because one of my jobs is to see that boys become men. And one of the things men do is they assume responsibility for their mistakes. And so I was going to facilitate and allow them to struggle and to rectify the mistake that they made, because my job as a father is to turn boys to men. And if they don't take responsibility for their actions, if they don't learn how to troubleshoot, if they don't learn how to work together to lift the couch and wiggle and make it work, then they're going to get used to me doing it for them. Then I'm going to have a 26-year-old that wants me to pay their phone bill, and I'm not going to do that. So you have to demonstrate and you have to give opportunities as it relates to fathering, as it relates to discipleship, as it relates to developing worship teams, developing service teams, developing different teams. You have to do for people what you expect from people. Because the authority of what you speak is actually rooted in how you live. Are you tracking with me? So this is important because those who are great in the kingdom don't go, I'm great, let me show you how great I am, let me take a picture of my greatness. That's not what it's about. What it's about is about being consistent and there being continuity between how you live and what you teach. Because this is essential for discipleship, because if you look at Matthew, what does Jesus say? Teaching them to observe all things that I commanded you. So how can I teach people to obey something that I myself don't obey? How can I expect from others what I'm unwilling to do myself? This is why in the kingdom, leadership has to be by example. And one of the issues that we have sometimes is that we think serving is a means to an end, when actually serving is the goal. Many people think that serving is a means to an end. That's a whole nother ball game. The disciples thought that. That's why they asked, can we sit on your left and your right? Why? Because they left businesses, they left families, and so they're like, if anyone has the right to sit on your right and to sit on your left, it's us. So in their mind, they were thinking they were going to serve their way into a position of power, not knowing serving is the position of power. Anyway, we're going to continue. Now, in Mark, Jesus demonstrates a different type of leadership. I'm going to read it again. Yet it shall not be so among you. Remember, he was speaking about how the Gentiles lord over or exercise authority or control over their subjects. Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become great, mega, among you shall be your servant. That's the word diakonos, where we get deacon. Someone who waits on tables. Someone who serves others. Someone who is observant of other people. A good waiter is someone who, before you ask for more water, the water's in your cup. Which means you can't be self-focused and a good server. But whoever desires to become great shall be your servant. And whoever desires to be first, you want to be like the chief, you want to be the top dog, the word here is the word we get the word protos. You want to be the protos, the prototype, then you shall be the slave or the doulos of all. I'm going to show you from Scripture what one of the jobs and one of the roles of the doulos is. There's no way that you can be a doulos and not get your hands dirty. There's no way. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. That's fathering. That's mothering. You are giving your life. Think about a mother breastfeeding a child. That child is sucking life out of the mother. Literally. That's more of a picture of ministry, to tell you the truth. I'm sorry to tell you this. Don't get upset with me. Than me singing, taking pictures of myself and quoting myself. That's cute. That feeds the animal of the algorithm. And that's where people are. And so that's great. And do that and be excited about all that. And there's nothing wrong with videos and speaking. But that's not ministry. Ministry is giving your life. Is ransoming your life in the service, in the redemption, in the care for the healing, for the well-being of others. That's a whole different thing. Like, people don't sign up for that. Like when I use the metaphor that ministry is like breastfeeding grown men. You guys remember that one? That's real. That's not like it's unforgettable. Good. It's because it's I can't, because it's reality. Because some people are not ready for meat. They think they're ready for meat. They're not ready for meat. So they need, milk. They need basic stuff. And the more I get older, the more I realize the more basic things need to be said to people because they don't do them. I couldn't believe when I first, was pastoring just a few years, I found myself telling people that were married, you need to eat with your wife, sleep with your wife, and pray with your wife. And I kept repeating this and repeating it, and I felt like I'm crazy, like I'm going crazy. I don't want to say this. But you'd be surprised how things that you think are normal are not normal. And then you realize that the dinner table is a place of discipleship, yet there are not a whole lot of dinner tables where a whole lot of discipleship is happening. And then you start seeing, well, what is the fruit of this type of disconnected life? And you see it's not good. So we have to get God's heart for service. We have to get God's heart for humility. We have to have God's heart for family, for covenant, for community. And real ministry is really like ransoming your life. It's really like choosing to go low. Now, John 13, we're going to be in here. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come and he should depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And supper being ended, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him. Now the word there is like the enemy threw something, cast this thing on Judas. I don't know if you've ever experienced this where, you're just boop, 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 walking around, and then all of a sudden a thought comes upon you, and you're like, whoa, what was that? And it's the voice going, well, this is why Paul writes about your helmet of salvation guarding the mind of Christ. Because the thoughts, and see, the thing with the voice is that when the voice speaks to you and gets inside of you, it begins to sound like you. So here you see the enemy put something in Judas's heart. Judas is following Jesus. Judas is the accountant for Jesus' ministry. Judas is connected to power. Judas is seeing ministry all the time. Judas is seeing miracles. Judas is in the mix of it. He's in the inner circle of Jesus. He is everywhere Jesus is, but the enemy is after his heart. The enemy is trying to put something foreign into his heart to make him behave in a way that is not helpful for himself or his future. Now, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, that he had come from God and was going to God, rose from supper, laid aside his garment, took a towel and girded himself. And after that he poured water into a basin and began to wash the feet of the disciples with the towel which he was girded with. Then Simon Peter said to him, Lord, you are not washing my feet. When Jesus does a role reversal with people, it makes them uncomfortable. The disciples had no problem passing out bread for Jesus. They had no problem going into town and getting lunch for Jesus. They had no problem going into town, getting the colt, untying the colt and bringing someone else's, colt back for Jesus. But when Jesus reversed roles on them and went to serve them, Peter's first response is no. Because Peter is not used to this type of power. Peter is used to top down. But bottom up feels uncomfortable. He's like, you're not like... See, Jesus does things a different way. Remember when Jesus tells Peter he's going to be crucified? Peter rebukes him. And then Jesus rebukes Peter, and he says that you value the things of men, not the things of God. So he had a value system that was incongruent to what God was doing, because his value system was rooted in self-preservation and self-exaltation, not self-giving love, not ransoming your life for many. So it's uncomfortable. Because, why is it uncomfortable? Because Jesus is demonstrating to them what he expects from them. And they're like, whoa, I didn't sign up to have you wash my feet and me wash someone else's feet. I signed up to sit on your left and sit on your right. But see, he's disorienting them to reorient them to power God's way. Because power God's way is different from the world. The world's power always leads to abuse. That's what happens when you get the world system inside the church. Abuse happens. Why does it happen? Because the church is responding and using power the same way the world uses power. You see it in marketing. It makes me sick. You see a picture of all the preachers, and whoever is making the flyer thinks he's a big shot. And so he's the biggest person on the flyer. Even in our marketing, it's like the world. And so if we relate to power and position in this way, we will not only hurt ourselves, we will hurt people. Anywhere people have been hurt in church, it usually has to do with power being abused or misused. You look at sexual abuse in homes. You look at domestic violence. What is it? So it's the abuse of power. You were supposed to be protecting that person. You sexualize them. You were supposed to be protecting them, and they were subject to your anger and your violence instead of you protecting them. And so if we don't get this right, we won't be able to do what God is wanting to do. Okay. Jesus answered and said to him, "What I am doing, you do not understand now." This is important because Jesus knows more about what they understand than they know about what they understand. Oh, this is something else. Okay, I'm gonna leave this alone for a second, but this is something. Now, Peter said, "You shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "If I do not wash your feet, you have no part with me." Peter has to learn that the relationship between him and Jesus is not on Peter's terms. This is important. This is important too for mentor-mentee relationships. The relationship is not on your terms. It's on the terms of the person who's pouring into you. It's not about when is good for me. It's about when it works for my pastor because he's pouring into me. I adjust myself for him. This is very important. You have to learn this, or else you'll misread the situation and you won't relate to the person that can help you right. And one of the ways people really hurt themselves is they do not learn how to relate to people that can help them properly. Because they're entitled and they think that the world revolves around them. Peter thinks the world revolves around him. And it's not until Peter utterly failed Jesus did he start to see what it's really about. Okay. Jesus answered him, "If I do not wash you, you have no part with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my hands only, not my feet only, but my hands and my head." He's all over the place. He should be shutting up and listening. Instead, he's telling Jesus what not to do, what he's not going to do, what Jesus is never going to do, what Jesus should do. This is an illustration of someone who is immature and excited and sincere, but doesn't know when to shut up and just actually be led. This is important because you cannot lead effectively until you have learned how to follow. This is a critical thing. When someone has the spirit of, I know how to do it better, I feel bad for you. Because I had those same ideas. And I'm telling you, when that idea starts getting into your head, you really, really don't know what you're talking about. And we live in a generation of inexperienced experts that know how to criticize everyone and build nothing. And so you wanna always approach a situation in humility, even when you think you know. And here's why: because you may think that you know something that you actually don't fully know the full story, and you may be looking at it incorrectly, and you may be looking at it without the full scope, and you may be misjudging something, and someone may be doing something that you're like, I don't agree with that, I don't think that's right, but you don't know why they're making that call. Politically, this happened. You know who this happened with? Obama. Obama says, we're going to get the troops out of Iraq. We're going to stop doing the drones. We're not going to do that. Then he became president, and they put 1,000 pieces of paper on his desk. He was briefed with national security and all the realities that Bush was facing. And what he did is he actually increased the drone attacks, not decreased them. Why? Because he was given the proper information. So before he was elected, before he had access to that information, he was making comments that are idealistic and ignorant. But when he had the right information, he was making different decisions, which shows you that this transcends Democrat, Republican, white, black, left, right, or politics. This has to do with knowledge and information. And so sometimes we don't have the right information to make the right decision. Peter doesn't understand what's happening, so Peter is resistant to what God is doing. Jesus said to him, "He who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean, and you are clean, but not all of you." For he knew who would betray him. Therefore he said, "You are not all clean." So when he had washed their feet, taken his garment, and sat down again, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord," or rabbi and Lord, Kyrios, "and you say, well, for so I am." Now he's telling them plainly he is the Lord. Now watch how he switches the order. "If I then, your Lord and teacher." You see that? You also see Simon Peter, because there's the battle between Simon, who he was, and who he's becoming is getting played out in the presence of the Lord. So now he says, "If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Most assuredly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them." See that? This is an interesting and a unique place to put like one of those Beatitudes. Blessed are, because now he puts a few of those in. And sometimes they find it, they're like in random places. You have to really pay attention to when one of those Beatitude type one-liners just comes into full sight. He says that blessed are you if you do them. This is important. You don't know what you know what you do, because doing is the thing that actually solidifies learning. So in the first century Jewish mind, in a biblical worldview, there is not a separation between what I believe and how I behave. That comes post-enlightenment. That's not a kingdom of God idea. So what I really believe is demonstrated in how I consistently live. This is very basic. This is not deep. Now, what's really profound about this whole situation, this is what I want to mention to you. Jesus takes his outer garments, he puts them down, and he wraps himself in a towel. So what happens is the dirt from their journey, from their walk, from life, he takes it upon himself, and now he's fulfilling the servant vocation of Isaiah 40 through 55. He is showing them that he is the servant, and he is going to bear the sins of the people. And this is the thing, one of the things that's very striking to me is that even Jesus washing your feet will not cleanse your own heart. I'm going to say that again. Even Jesus washing your feet will not cleanse your heart. Jesus will help you with your heart. Jesus will allow you to see things with him and through him that you couldn't see about yourself. Jesus will help you to deal with it, but you have to choose to deal with it. Because even Jesus washing Judas's feet did not cleanse Judas's heart. You can be around the power of God. You can be around the move of God. You can be around powerful people, pure people. You can be around the greatest of the great, the best of the best. But if you don't guard your heart, the end of that is destruction. Can you imagine? Jesus washed his feet and he still walked away from God, betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, and hung himself. No matter how much you love people, no matter how inclusive you are, welcoming people, inviting people, let me give you a place, you be the accountant, you be the deacon, you be the this. No matter what you do, no matter how much love you show, no matter how humble you are, no matter how sincere you are, no matter how pure you are, you can be perfect like Jesus, and people will still choose to do things that will destroy their life. You have to keep loving them. You have to show kindness. But at the end of the day, we don't choose for people. At the end of the day, Judas made a choice, and God allowed him to do what he wanted to do. This is really sobering. For 30 pieces of silver, he destroyed himself. People, the most dangerous thing you can do is not guard your heart. The greatest way that you can protect your future is not a 401k plan, mutual funds. That's all good. I hope you do that. But the greatest way that you can protect your future is by guarding your heart and realizing that the spirit of man is the candle of the Lord, searching the inward parts. You have to invite God to search you, to try you, to allow you to see what is going on inside of your own life. You have to communicate, confess. You have to approach God, the Scripture, the body of Christ with humility. You have to approach, life with wisdom. You cannot just assume that just because you're a part of something that's real and powerful or something that's real and pure, that your heart is okay. This is sobering. I don't know if you're getting this. Jesus washed his feet and it still did not cleanse his heart. You know, the way they would sit at the table is very interesting. Their feet would not be toward the table. So they would recline, and they would be really on their left elbow because they would eat with their right hand. And so they would all be kind of like leaning in like this. And their feet are all on the outside of the circle. And what Jesus does is he takes on the role not of the servant, not of the waiter, not of the deacon, but he takes upon the role of the doulos, the slave, the lowest guy on the totem pole, like the lowest guy. He goes, the Father has given all things into my power. And what does he do? He goes to the bottom. I'll be like, we're doing a crusade in Jerusalem. Put my name in lights. Make sure you send me those pictures before you go to sleep tonight. Because the internet needs more pictures of me. That's not what he does. What does he do? He takes all of the power that he has. The Father has given all things into my hands. He takes off his outer garment, which was a fresh garment. He puts on a towel. And the dirt from the people that he is positionally above gets on himself, illustrating what he came to do and who he is. This is interesting. Jesus is our standard and example. Jesus uses power to serve those he's leading, to set an example for them so that they understand the spirit of power in the kingdom. Because power in the kingdom is not the same as power in the world. This is important. See, sometimes people serve with serving as a means to an end. And there is no end of serving as long as you have breath in your lungs. He says, for I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. The example is what? Serving, going low. This is an expression of humility. This was uncomfortable for them. Let me explain this to you. In the Jewish culture, I want you to understand that this is what Jesus is doing is radical. In the Jewish culture, Joshua served Moses. Moses didn't serve Joshua. Do you understand that? And that was not an abuse of power. That was a God-ordained relationship to prepare Joshua to lead. So serving is a part of how God processes you for a position of power, but not power like the world. It's different. It's not in the same spirit or the same heart attitude. And Elisha, who was Elijah's servant, it says that he washed the hands of Elijah. How do you become a prophet? You're mentored by a prophet. Seed reproduces after its kind. So Elisha wanted what was on Elijah's life, and so what did he do? He served him. That was not an abuse of power. That was a good, God-ordained relationship. That was important. And so in the spirit of humility, Elisha, the young man, pours water on the hands of Elijah. Jesus reverses the order. Jesus is the top dog in that room. Jesus doesn't go, hey guys, wash my hands, wash my feet. Hey, Jesus goes, puts his outer garment, wraps himself in a towel, and washes their feet as an illustration of what kingdom power, what humility, what leadership, what service looks like. This is important. It's the opposite spirit that Judas was in. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. So now Jesus is raising the bar. He's setting a new standard in his family, in his community. He's not just saying, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Some people hate themselves and they hate their neighbor. Jesus is like, the way I loved you, the way I was long-suffering with you, the way I was patient with you, the way I provided for you, the way I made opportunities for you, the way I led you, the way I served you, the way I prayed for you, the way I have loved you, love each other. Now, if you have that attitude toward me, and I have that attitude towards you, it's very hard to have strife. If you prefer me and I prefer you, that means we're not jockeying for position or fighting with each other, but we're actually loving Jesus and serving one another and loving one another, because the example that Jesus set for us is what he expects from us. Which helps you understand why Peter's like, don't wash my feet. like leave me alone. Because what is demonstrated for you and what is demonstrated in front of you is for you. Are you guys tracking with me? This is something, there's so much here which I'm not and I can and I won't go into all of what this is, but I'm trying to establish with us Christ-centered leadership, leading like Christ, loving like Christ, walking with integrity, walking with purity, understanding that we don't do power the way the world does power. We don't handle money the way the world handles money. We don't handle people the way the world handles people. We don't look at the future the way the world looks at the future. We don't look at problems and crises the way the world looks at problems and crises. We are kingdom people, kingdom ambassadors. So we can't look at the world through the lens of the world and think we're going to have anything for the world. We have to look at the world through the lens of the kingdom so that we have solutions for the world. The most humble person in the universe is Jesus. This is what Bishop Mark Sharona was saying to the pastors the other day, that it just is baffling how humble Jesus is. And one of the ways that we see Jesus' humility, that to me speaks louder than any other thing, to me personally, the way I see the humility of Jesus the most is the way I see the availability of Jesus. Because here's the thing, the more powerful you are, the bigger you are, the harder it is to get in contact with you. The more money you have, the more insulated you are, the bigger the wall in front of your house, the bigger the gate, the greater the security team, the more passwords, you know. And I see the humility of Jesus by the availability of Jesus when Jesus says, anyone who's thirsty, come. You who have no money, come and buy. Anyone who comes to me, I will in no way cast them out. The humility of Jesus is seen in the availability of Jesus, and you can have as much of Jesus as you're willing to give of yourself. Jesus is not withholding any of himself from you. Jesus is not withholding anything that he has for you. We withhold who we are and where we are from him and rob ourselves of what he has. It's not him that is withholding anything from us. Jesus is our example. Jesus used power to serve, not for status. Imagine Jesus is getting ready to be crucified and Jesus is thinking of washing their feet. Like, are you tracking with me? He's getting ready to be stripped, whipped, beaten, mocked, crowned with thorns. They're going to pull his beard from his face. They're going to gamble for his clothing. He's going to be ripped apart. His body is going to be stretched to the absolute max. His bones, none of them broken, visible because of the cat of nine tails. It says that his heart melted like wax. His heart physically ruptured because of the stretching on the cross. The amount of pain and suffering and shame. And he despised shame. He looked down on shame. He was getting ready to go through that. And instead of being self-focused, he's like, I got to wash their feet. It's like, wow. All things are given into his hands. And that's how he responds. You see who someone is when they get a little power. The monster comes out. Someone gets a little cash, little cash money. They start thinking that, what I'm saying, oh yeah. See, anyway, let me shut up. Jesus does and then teaches. Do you see that? Does and then teaches. What he did, he washes their feet and then he says, okay, what I've done for you, do for each other. He's not talking about them washing the feet of the world. He's talking about them washing one another's feet. Because Jesus understands that the purity of the church is the church's witness. Are you listening to what I'm saying? The cleanliness and the purity of the church is the church's witness. One of the things that the early church, one of the ways people knew people were Christians is by what they would not participate with. They would not go to the orgies. They would not go to they would not participate in demonic stuff. So they go, where's Johnny? Where's Billy? Where's Kevin? Oh, Kevin doesn't celebrate this cultic thing in Ephesus that they're doing with orgies and sex and stuff because Kevin is a believer. Oh, so Christians were known, they were known in the first century by what they did not participate with. Their cleanliness, their holiness was what identified them. So Jesus is showing, yes, he's going to take on their sin. He's showing them how to use power. But this is also about purity, holiness. That's what distinguishes us from the world. We're not as the world. I hope you know that. I don't know if you're with that, but that's biblical. We have lost that in our culture. We have lost that holiness, that righteousness is a requirement. That's not oppressive. It actually leads to peace and joy. This is, and so the bar has been so lowered that when someone talks about holiness or righteousness, immediately people hear legalism. That's because they're so used to no accountability. That's not good. And that won't serve us and that won't serve our children. What will keep us distinct from the world is living a holy and righteous and godly life and living with integrity and using power correctly. Now, for those who are at home, you can think of this talk about it with whoever you're with. How can you serve with humility? How can you lead with love? So those are two questions to consider, because when we're leading and when we're serving and we're leading in the shape of a cross. Everything that we do is cross-shaped. Even the patterns and processes in our life are cross-shaped. There's always a seed. It's got to die before it rises. And before it rises, there's time. So there's seed time and harvest. So there's death and resurrection. Then there's ascension. And this is all a part of our real walk and our real life with God.